In the current technological, advanced and interconnected world, both success and survival rely on adaptation to changes by evolving with time. One of the most significant changes witnessed in the telecommunication industry is the ever-increasing demand for high-speed connectivity. Next session is a fireside chat on Technology Trends 2020 with Erik Ekudden, Group CTO, Senior Vice President and Head of Technology and Strategy, Ericsson, and Danish, Assistant Editor, ETTelecom.com. Over to you, gentlemen.
Hello, everyone. We have Mr. Erik Ekudden, Group CTO of Ericsson, for a very good fireside session on telecom technology trends, which are taking place globally. Erik is going to take questions from me, and we are hoping for a good session. So my first question to you, Erik, is this year 2020 is it has been an unprecedented year, right? The pandemic, social unrest, economic turbulence. How are these bigger societal issues have altered or changed this year's technology trends? Being a CTO, how do you see the whole situation and how trends are panning out? If you could give a sense on that.
Well, first of all, thanks, Danish, for having me here. And I think you're absolutely right. We are in the middle still of fighting the pandemic in most part of the world, and it has changed many things in our lives. Of course, how we use digital technologies, the usage has gone up, and so many things have changed in our lives. The technology trend, though, that you ask about, they haven't really changed, because this is where we take the long-term outlook. We look 5 years out, maybe even 10 years out in terms of the technology trends and how they will impact business over the coming years. But of course, I think what we are seeing right now is an acceleration of digitalization across society, and also the extreme importance that networks have in terms of supporting people, supporting society at large, and of course supporting enterprises. So it's a further acceleration, I would say, of the realization of the importance of the network.
So in last year's trends, Ericsson introduced the concept of the network as a platform. So can you explain about what does it mean and why it is still relevant in the market, especially considering the new reality which has emerged this year after the pandemic was announced?
So we look at the network very much as a platform for innovation, and I think you see that in India, you see it across the world, that also 4G was a true platform for innovation, where many companies, many new ideas were born out of having access to 4G as an underlying infrastructure. And now with the evolution into 5G, we see the same thing starting to happen in both the consumer space with more immersive experiences and in the enterprise space, where you can automate everything from factories to transportation, logistics, and so much more. So I think that this concept of the network being open for innovation, an open platform for innovation, this is really resonating with enterprises and I would say also political leaders around the world, meaning that you actually have to invest in the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, the network platform as a foundation for the innovation to happen in the rest of society. And I think we're seeing an acceleration, to your point, but we're also seeing that this is really now starting to kick off when we have rolled out the first 5G networks around the world and start to see the fantastic performance and the growth opportunities that comes with it.
So when it comes to 5G globally, I'm sure Ericsson is working with a lot of telecom operators. Do you see the need 5G is now getting accelerated, where telcos are now advancing their plans to roll out 5G in their respective markets, since you work with all the global telecom operators?
We see some acceleration, and this is mainly in the markets where all the conditions are the right ones, where spectrum is available and assigned at reasonable prices to operators, where the incentives to make investments in coverage and of course capacity, but initially building out coverage of 5G, and also where there is, I would say, the readiness to develop new services, be it in the consumer space, augmented virtual reality in Korea, or the more connectivity-oriented services in North America, and perhaps enterprise as an example from Switzerland, where they are using 5G as an enabler to address businesses and their needs with 5G. So it's happening a little bit faster than we expected before. In fact, by the end of this year, 2020, we expect 190 million 5G subscribers around the world. And in just 5 years' time, by 2025, we expect 2.8 billion 5G subscribers. So there is a phenomenal uptake of 5G, a little bit, I would say, uneven. So we see the leading markets where the investments are taken early on, they are pushing ahead, while there is more of reluctance in some other markets. So it's a little bit of a mixed situation now.
So there is one term which Ericsson coined, was the Internet of Senses, which is the ability to deliver sensory experiences over the future networks. Why does this trend continue to be relevant for future networks? So if you could like give us more sense about it.
I very much think so, Danish. I think what we have seen in the early days of work from home and everything that the new normal now in the world has brought with us. It's video conferences, it's like what we are engaging in right now. You would like to have good sound and good video, of course, but you would like to go even further than that. So the augmented virtual reality, the mixed reality, that becomes a natural next step. And we're already seeing that with the 5G experience that we can offer now. But if you take the next step, it's really about the senses. It's about smell, which I think is perhaps something that we don't all think of today. It's taste, but it's also the feedback, the actuation, the haptics. And the Internet of Senses is taking this immersive experience to the next level. Of course, the network is critically important with low latency and the high performance that 5G brings, but it's also very much about the modalities being implemented in everyday devices, not smartphones, but wearables. I think interesting actually to note that our consumer research coming out fresh from working with 100,000 respondents around the world indicate that there's a readiness. There is actually an eagerness to embrace these kind of new capabilities. Internet of Senses, when you ask people, even in Delhi, about how they see that, they really would like to have that smell and taste, at least the early adopters. So I think that we see the Internet of Senses as a next step on this journey, but we also see that the readiness of the consumers around the world is perhaps greater than we expected before. So absolutely.
So are there some emerging technologies which could enable the future network platform? If you could shed some light.
Sure. So the way we look at these trends is really about the enablers or the use cases, if you like, on top of them, and obviously the Internet of Senses is one of the key ones. Now we're more into the innovation and the technologies in the platform itself. And there I'd like to particularly point out the importance of cognitive networks going forward. India in particular, but I would say most forward-leaning operators around the world, they are really looking to use a data-driven mode of operating, managing their networks. We're fortunate to work with our lead customers in India in particular, but also around the world in terms of this journey to automating and getting better user experience and higher efficiency in the networks. So one of the 4 trends also for the 5 and 10 years out is really about cognitive networks, where we're using AI, we're using technologies that gather much more of the operational data in a closed loop fashion, really makes it something that is manageable, because with 5G and what comes next, the complexity of the networks have gone up significantly, and it can't really be tuned manually. You need to automate this. So the AI and the cognition piece of this is really important. That, of course, comes with the important responsibility and trustworthiness of AI, but it goes without saying that having access to operational data for many networks around the world allows us to provide a better experience, doing a better job than if you tune every network for its own sake, so to say. So that's one of the key areas. Another area is really what's happening on the access side itself. Now we see gigabit per second speeds in 5G, but if you look 5-10 years into the future, we actually see that the innovation in this field will just continue and most likely accelerate. Wireless is a new normal, but also the fact that we go up even higher in frequency to get the bandwidth and lower latency, and we can complement wireless electromagnetic wireless technology with light emitting diode technologies as a complement in short range and indoor environments. So there are many things happening in the coming years also on the access side. I should mention, of course, also what's important already today, which is to bring compute and storage closer to the users, closer to the enterprise. Today we call that the edge cloud, but in the coming 5 to 10 years, we will start to talk about it as a fabric where the connectivity and the processing really comes together. So this is a key trend. There we can also explore much more advanced accelerator technologies on the hardware side, and of course new software as well. So these are just a few of the examples of the major trends affecting the network platforms in the year to come.
So my next set of questions are on Indian market, since Ericsson closely works with the Indian telecom operators, and you have been very active in terms of engaging with the telecom operators through your Indian operations. So how do you see the journey of Indian telecom operators in terms of their transformation into becoming digital telecom operators? If you could give a sense.
Yes, well, first of all, it's an important time now in the industry for operators to position themselves as digital telcos. And we already spoke a little bit about what we see now with the new normal, the digital or the mixed mode out of the pandemic. But here, this is really about realizing that data will grow fivefold over the coming 5 years globally. And 5G data itself or alone is going to be 2.3 times as much as the data that we have in all the networks today. So there's an enormous growth in data traffic usage that operators need to take care of. And that's really the starting point when it comes to being a strong digital telco. And I think that as networks, as I mentioned before, they are becoming more complex. This is really about using the operational data, using the tools, the AI tools to automate. And here you can also see the Indian operators being at the forefront. We are very fortunate to work with the Indian operators, Bharti and Vodafone Idea in particular here, and really honored to be able to work with such strong operators in this journey to becoming a fully digital telco. It comes also with the network infrastructure. Automation, the AI is one piece, but equally important is what we are doing on the access side, the software upgrade of 4G networks to 5G, but also the packet core. The packet core is the session handling, the machinery that really makes all the video sessions, all the personal sessions, but of course also the enterprise session, receiving the right quality of service, making sure that if you sign up to an SLA that you get that delivered. And here I also see great opportunities in the Indian market to really pioneer some of these new technologies. And we are fortunate again to work with these customers to build out and to upgrade the networks. So I would say in a good position, very good position.
So when you look at the Indian telecom operators and you work with the European or Western US based operators, so how do you compare or compare Indian telecom operators with those telcos globally? Do you think that Indian telcos are on the right track in terms of their network modernization and their plans to bring 5G to reality?
Yeah, I do. And I definitely see Indian operators are doing a remarkable job in ensuring that these networks are really delivering the quality that is expected. And of course, it's a complexity in the Indian market that has to be dealt with. So absolutely, fantastic job. I think what we see also around the world, since you ask, is that this is not an easy journey, because we are talking about changes in the technology landscape, going from 4G to 5G technology, at the same time as we're making changes in the business landscape, going from consumer to consumers and enterprises. And we're of course also making changes in the business and the business models. So I think for every operator that we work with around the world, this is a major undertaking that requires strong strategy to execute on, but it also requires to have dedicated management teams that can focus on the performance of the networks, that can focus on the experience for users, but also of course the cost side of the equation as well as the growth. So it becomes a combination navigating in this relatively uncharted water. So I'm very positive about the development with the Indian operators versus what we see in other parts of the world.
Would you have some viewpoint on Indian telecom operators plans to develop 5G use cases? Are there some use cases which are available globally and could be relevant for the Indian market as well?
For sure, but I think this is really where this network platform and the innovation that comes on top of it really needs to go local. So although there are some very obvious use cases that are spreading around the world, I mentioned everything in the logistics and the asset tracking, the things that are happening in the transportation sector. Those are, I would say, equally relevant in all parts of the world, because there you can get the efficiency gains, and there you can really see that we're also helping with pollution and energy consumption in society at large. I think that's a great opportunity. But I think in many markets, what we've also learned now during the pandemic is that you need to invest in the infrastructure to be able to serve even kids going to school, or the cases where you have to have remote education, connectivity to be able to serve new usage patterns. And this is true in, I would say, the education sector. It's equally true in the health sector, because you have to limit social interaction and traveling. So those are not only for the here and now and the current crisis, they are really some of those areas where I'm very positive that 4G and 5G, and also in India, can be fantastic support for the change in society. I think it goes without saying that the strong Indian IT industry is perfectly suited also to work together hand in hand with operators, and I would say with Ericsson, since what we are seeing here is that this is about co-creation. This is really about starting with the underlying infrastructure as a platform for innovation, and then jointly build those use cases that require higher performance, higher security, reliability and resilience, so that the service is provided all the time. And of course, some new user experience that would most likely come from smaller companies, that would come from the innovation that is spurred out of the local needs. Those would not necessarily be fully globalized use cases.
Any last concluding comments as we wrap up this session? Any comment on the futuristic technologies which could disrupt the global telecom industry? If you could just give an insight into being a CTO of a large technology company.
But I think there are so many exciting things in the coming 5 to 10 years that I actually refrain from giving you more examples on the specifics of that. But I would like to return really to the fact that this decade ahead of us now, the coming 5 to 10 years, it will truly be a decade of innovation in the network. Network, as I mentioned, being even more critical national infrastructure, even higher performance, more reliable for users to live their digital or mixed mode lives. So that is really where I'm excited about the innovation. And that will go across the whole field, from the devices through the access to the fabric that I mentioned before, orchestration and AI. These are all key parts of innovation. But if we don't use this opportunity now, which we are enabling with a platform to create new and compelling use cases that really demand higher performance, that people expect to provide high performance, then I think we are missing an opportunity. I think this is really the time to invest. This is the time to make sure that the infrastructure is there to support the rest of society. And you could think about a 5G first or a digital first era in the coming 5 to 10 years. And then, of course, if I look even further out, I'm very confident that we will continue to innovate and drive new technology for meeting the needs of consumers and enterprises well beyond 10 years.
So I think on that note, Erik, we can conclude this session. I think you have answered all my questions very diligently and with all the examples, great examples. I think we can conclude this. Thank you, Erik, for this session and taking out time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danish.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a wonderful and engrossing discussion. I hope you all are using the hashtag ETDigitalTelco in all your tweets. Stay tuned for the next session.